Hi, it's Steph, and we're at the Home Depot. And they have lots of new beautiful annuals and perennials and shrubs. So let's go ahead and take a look at the end of June inventory at the Home Depot. Look at these gorgeous big leaf begonias. These caught my eye as soon as I drove up. Such large, shiny foliage and these beautiful blooms. Gorgeous. Now in my zone 6, this is an annual, but they're really beautiful. So if you haven't yet done your annual containers as we head into the 4th of July weekend, these would be a really beautiful option. And they look like they would transition beautifully into fall because of the dark color of this foliage. These are the big begonia, and they get to be 18 to 24 inches in height and 12 to 14 inches in width. It says water when dry, heat tolerant, and easy to grow. $9.98. And these beauties are the Sunfinity sunflowers. So these are multi-stem, multi-bloom sunflowers, and the more you deadhead them, the more they'll bloom. These are an annual, but they're continuous blooming, so they will bloom for you from now through the fall. And the pollinators love them. There are pollinators all over these. Look at that. This container here looks to be, it looks close to a 2-gallon. Let's see. It's $15.98 for Sunfinity Sunflower Helianthus Hybrid, and it's at least a gallon to a gallon and a half. Good size. And they look really healthy. The foliage looks beautiful, and look at all these bloom buds. Tons of them here and here and even there. These are really pretty. Such a cheery flower. And check out this gorgeous bee balm, or Monarda, by Proven Winners. These have a wonderful fragrance. I wish that you could smell them. I have some bee balm in my garden and I love it. I love the smell of it. The pollinators love it. It's really beautiful perennial. Now I can't find a tag on them, but I did find a cute bee having some lunch. It looks like it could be Pardon My Purple. The last time I was here, they did have some Pardon My Purple in stock. They do look more pink. I also have a variety called Rockin' Raspberry that's similar to this color. But these large containers here are number 3, and they are $24.98. But they're quite large, so you could probably very easily divide these in at least 2 good-sized plants. And it's getting to be Shasta daisy season. Mine are starting to open up and bloom in my garden. And these are really pretty because they have this really frilly type petal. The ones I have in my garden are more traditional, like in this style here. In fact, these even look different because they look to be double petal, where I have a single petal, very traditional style Shasta daisy. But I'm really enjoying the look of these. I think they're really beautiful. Now the container just reads Shasta daisy. So it's not telling me if it's a specific variety, but they are a full sun perennial, also a pollinator magnet. These are a beautiful garden staple, whether you have a cottage garden or a traditional garden design. The color of them fit, they'll fit in anywhere. They bloom early summer to fall with regular deadheading, and deadheading is when you have a spent bloom, you're just going to follow the stem all the way down and you're going to trim it, and that is cleaning up the plant and deadheading it. That will keep the plant producing blooms instead of signaling it to produce seed and stop blooming. Okay, so these here, let's see how big they get. 12 to 36 inches in height, and they need 12 to 24 inch spacing, and they are hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. These also reseed themselves freely, so if you have Shasta daisies in your garden, it could be that you end up with them spreading a little bit, which I don't mind, but if you do, something to keep an eye on. But really beautiful. These daisies are in their house brand containers. They're number 3 for $19.98. Now this beautiful daisy right beside it that we use as an example has a little bit of a hue of yellow. These are actually the Proven Winners Amazing Daisies Banana Cream. So they start off with a bit of this yellow hue and then they age to a white daisy. Now the Proven Winners Amazing Daisies Banana Cream is a full sun perennial, and it gets to be 15 to 18 inches. It looks like that might be the height. Let's see here. Yep, the height is 15 to 18 inches in height. They need 18-inch spacing. They're hardy in zones 5 through 9 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. They bloom early summer into late summer, and they like full sun. And this container is also the 3-gallon Proven Winners for $24.98. Check out these beautiful purple annual containers with the Verbena bonariensis popping up the top. These are also really good self-seeders. They will pop up everywhere in your garden once you have them, but the color combination on these are beautiful. They have this verbena, some lobelia, some petunias, really pretty. And it looks like they are $34.98, and they're a self-watering container. So lots of options still for your summer containers. And check out this beautiful variety of black-eyed Susans. These have this almost like a maroon color, splash of color around the center of the cone, and then yellow on the tips, where typically you see them just with the brown center and the yellow petals. So this one has another dimension of interest in it. Has a bunch of buds. And let's see what the variety is. It says that it's called Black-Eyed Susan or Rudbeckia hirta sonora. It is a full sun perennial. It gets to be 12 to 18 inches in height and needs 14-inch spacing, water when dry, and hardy to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it blooms early summer through fall. Now, the thing with Black-Eyed Susans is they're a great mid to late summer perennial. So just when your other perennials start getting tired and we're starting to get those cooler evenings as we transition from summer through fall, this is a great perennial to add to your garden. When we're building our gardens, it's important to add flowers throughout the season that will continue to provide us with color and for the pollinators. And the best way to do that is to visit the garden center at different times throughout the growing season. They will always put out new inventory, and that will give you an idea of what will be blooming at that particular period. And a beautiful Gara, another wonderful perennial for pollinators. Very wispy and kind of moves in the wind, really whimsical. And so this one is called Gara Belleza White. Gets to be 10 to 16 inches in height. It needs 16 to 20 inches in width, hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms early summer through fall. $9.98 for this container here. And dead nettle or lamium, a wonderful ground cover. So this one, I'm going to show you the foliage in just a second, but this particular variety here is called Purple Dragon. I actually have this in my garden, and it's just blooming now in this really pretty fuchsia purple color. It gets to be 4 to 8 inches in height and needs 10 to 14 inch spacing, water when dry, and hardy to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Blooms late spring to summer. And this container here is $9.98. It is a part sun perennial. So look at the foliage on this. It's absolutely beautiful. It's got these outside edges in the darker green with a silver coloring in the center, and this spreads beautifully. This makes a wonderful ground cover, and I really like that this lamium has larger foliage than some of the other varieties. This Purple Dragon. Ground covers are great because as they grow, they cover more of the soil, which means that over time you will need less mulch. And check out these beautiful hydrangeas that are in full bloom. These are a smooth type hydrangea, similar to the Incrediball, and it looks like this one might be the blush variety. So let's take a look. This variety is the Proven Winners Hydrangea Incrediball, and it is the blush. It's a number 2 container, and it is $29.98. Now the size specifications on these state that they get 4 to 5 feet tall and wide, and that they are full sun. But I will tell you that I have the wee white hydrangea, which is a dwarf variety of the smooth hydrangea in my garden. It is white, but it crisps up pretty badly in the sun. So I would say to give these part sun at best, but they are absolutely beautiful. And the smoke bush, a beautiful shrub for a red accent in your garden. The foliage is absolutely beautiful, and it blooms. In fact, I've planted one of these last year, and it just finished blooming for me this year, and they look like puffs of smoke or cotton candy, just this really pretty pink puff. And they're just gorgeous. Now these can get fairly large as a shrub, but you can also limb them up and train them as a small tree, which is what I'm trying to do with mine. So let's take a look at the specs on this. So the smoke tree royal purple is a full sun shrub. It is deer resistant. I can vouch for that. The deer do not bother it in my garden. They get to be 8 to 10 feet in height, and they need 10 to 12 foot spacing, and they bloom early to late summer, hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and I do have mine planted in full sun. Now these containers here are number 3 for $29.98. So really great garden shrub. They still have some of this sweet flag Ogon Acorus, which is a type of grass. It is absolutely beautiful. And in my zone 6, this does stay evergreen for me. What I love so much about it is that it has this gorgeous yellow color, and I have it planted in a problem area in my garden. It's a garden bed that stays pretty wet. The drainage is pretty poor. I am working on trying to improve it soon. But for now, these grasses are doing wonderfully there. They're very happy. In fact, I was just able to divide them. So this bright color stays this bright yellow mostly in the cool temperatures of spring and fall. It gets a little paler in the summer, not too much, but a little bit paler, but it retains a yellow color throughout the winter, which is great. So let's check out the specs on this. It says it's a perennial grass for part sun, sweet flag Ogon, and it gets to be 6 to 12 inches in height, and it needs, which I would say that the height is pretty accurate, but it spreads more than 6 to 8 inches. I had one get about 12 to 18 inches across. And it's hardy to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, weekly watering, and more often until established. They do love water. These definitely love water. So this container here is $12.98. Here's another really cool shrub that I have never seen here before. It is a heavenly bamboo called flirt or nandina. Most places in the South will refer to these as nandina. The tag reads heavenly bamboo, but it does say nandina there as well. It is a full sun shrub with attractive foliage. It gets to be 3 to 8 feet tall. And it says that it blooms late spring through summer. And it looks like there is a couple of little blooms on there. And I will zoom in on those in a second. And so they get to be 24 to 48 inches they need for spacing. And they're hardy to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, watered 2 to 3 times per week. So it looks like the blooms would have been these tiny little white flowers that we can see here, little dainty flowers. So probably pretty insignificant, but it does bloom. And look at this new red foliage. Beautiful. So really pretty for a textural element in your mixed shrub borders. And let's see how much these are. These are by the Southern Living Plant Collection brand. And this is the number 3 container for $29.98. And this looks to be a new Weigela by Proven Winners, at least new in the garden centers this year. It is called Midnight Wine Shine Dwarf Weigela. It has this beautiful dark foliage. Let's see what color the blooms are. Let's see, it says better color makes Midnight Wine Shine a better choice for your landscape. It's a tidy habit, dramatic dark purple foliage makes this deer resistant shrub perfect for beds and containers. Now it doesn't tell me what color the blooms are, nor does it show a picture of the blooms, but it is a dwarf shrub, and it looks like it gets to be 1 to 1.5 feet tall and 2 to 2.5 feet wide. Hardy in zones 4 through 8 or to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And Weigela is really also another really beautiful shrub, even for a foliage accent. The color of the blooms on the Midnight Wine Shine Dwarf Weigela is pink, very similar to the spilled wine or the wine and roses. And this container here is a 3-gallon for $34.98. Check out these gorgeous and hot pink colored hydrangeas. These are the mop head type or the macrophylla type hydrangeas, and I think this is also a new variety by Proven Winners at the garden center this year. It is called Wee Bit Giddy, and it is a big leaf hydrangea. Let's see here. It needs sun or part shade, and it is hardy in zones 5 through 9 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be only 2 feet tall by 2.5 feet wide, so it's a really petite size or dwarf shrub. Now I do find that these mop head type or these big leaf hydrangeas do prefer a bit more shade, so I would say to stick to the part shade, and maybe if it does get sun, stick to like a morning sun, which will be a little bit softer, but otherwise these look to be a really pretty hydrangea. And let's see, they are a number 3 container for $34.98. And here are the blooms. Now, in most cases with these macrophylla type or mop head type hydrangeas, the color of the bloom will be largely dependent on the acidity of your soil. More acidic soil, you will get a hydrangea that leans more in the blue side, and if you have a more alkaline soil, they'll lean more pink or purple. So don't be surprised if you plant these and the color doesn't stay quite so pink. It could be very dependent on your soil. Check out this beautiful rose, and it's really fragrant. I actually just sniffed it. It is called Peach Swirl, and it is by the Painter's Collection, and it's a Home Depot brand. It looks like it's in a Home Depot type container. It says it's inspired by the great French Impressionists. So the container here is a 3-gallon for $29.98. Roses generally like sun, and they like some water but not soggy soil. In fact, I'm having trouble with my roses because they were in a bed that was a little bit wet, so I'm trying to nurse them back to health. But in general, they like to be on the drier side and in a very sunny spot. But this is really beautiful. This peach swirl actually has a swirl in it. It almost looks like it's striped with a creamy color and this apricot peach. My store is still having a sale on their flowering trees and shade trees, 50% off, as well as whatever they have left for fruit trees. So great opportunity to pick up some trees. You can still plant them in the summer. You'll just have to be more vigilant with checking for water and making sure that they're happy and not drying out. But look at this right here. This is a willow, and they get pretty wild. My neighbor has one that he has to trim pretty often to keep it in check. So if you plant one of these out in the landscape, give it plenty of space and don't plant it directly in front of a window. That's what they did, and I think it gives them some trouble, which is why they frequently trim. But it is absolutely beautiful. The foliage is gorgeous. I'm gonna get in closer on that. Check that out. It has like a mottled or speckled appearance with a little bit of a cream coloring and some variegation with some green, and the new growth has pink. And they have these dark colored stems. They're really beautiful. It's called a dappled willow. And here's the information on it. It's a dappled willow, Hikuro nishiki. And it says it has outstanding color, which is true, and attractive foliage. It gets to be 4 to 5 feet tall. I would say it can get a little bit taller than that. And it needs 5-foot spacing, hardy to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And willows in general do like water. So this one is saying to water it 2 to 3 times per week until established. And these dappled willows are in this area where they have the 50% off shade trees. They do exclude the Japanese maples, but flowering trees and fruit trees. So instead of $79.98, they may very well be 50% off. And another beautiful evergreen shrub for some winter interest is Andromeda, or Pyrus japonica. Look at all of this new growth that shoots out in this pretty red coloring. And that is with most of the pyruses I find. They all have this very vibrant, fresh new growth. Some lean a little bit more pink, some lean a little bit more red, and some even look yellow, like this one back here. But they are really great shrubs for some color in your very late winter, early spring garden. They typically bloom. So the blooms look like these little bell-shaped flowers that you see here in the photo. The only thing with these is in my zone 6, they are only at the cusp of being hardy. So this year we got a late season frost that zapped all of my blooms. So that is something that can happen. While the foliage is really beautiful and still a reason to grow it, just know that sometimes if you get a late season frost, depending on your zone, you may not get the blooms. So it says that it blooms mid to late spring. It needs 36 to 48 inch spacing. It is hardy to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a part sun shrub. So these are understory shrubs. They like to have a little bit of protection from the sun in order to do best. I had some planted in a sunnier spot, and I actually, they weren't putting out bloom buds or anything. So I moved them to a shadier spot, and they're doing much better. And the Pyrus is in their Home Depot house containers, and they're number 3 for $29.98. And they have a couple of different varieties. In fact, this one here reads that it would be full sun, but I would still only put it in part sun, but that's my personal preference. This one's here is called Japanese Valley Valentine. This other one was Japanese Andromeda Cupido. So there's a couple of different ones to choose from. And another really beautiful hydrangea by Proven Winners, the Bobo. And you can see that it's just starting to bud up. And these are gorgeous hydrangeas. Let's check out the specs on these. Check out the size of these blooms. They start opening up from the bottom all the way up, and they have really large panicles. This one's a little bit further ahead. Really pretty. I love how they have this bit of a green cast to them, and then they start getting a little bit creamier white. Just really beautiful. And here is the information on the Bobo. It is a panicle type hydrangea, and it is more compact as well. So the Bobo gets to be 2.5 to 3 feet tall and 3 to 4 foot wide. It likes sun and part shade, and it needs 4 to 5 foot spacing, and then it'll age to this beautiful shade of pink. They do like water. Hydrangeas in general like water, so if you keep these nice and watered, you should get all of these beautiful color changes without the shrub crisping up on you. I did have a little bit of crisping going on last year, but we did have a very drought and hot summer, and I didn't water them quite as much as I should have, but I absolutely love the Bobo hydrangea. This container here is a 3-gallon, and it is, let's see, $34.98 here at the Home Depot. And a really cool perennial shrub that I just learned about last year, the potentilla. Look how cool these little blooms are. They're really dainty. They almost have the appearance of, say, like a drift rose. And even the foliage is like really soft, which feels more like a perennial flower instead of a shrub, to be honest. They're just very delicate feeling and really beautiful. So the potentilla, let's see, this one is called Happy Face Pink Paradise. And let's see what the specs are on this one. It looks like they're hardy in zones 2 through 7 or down to negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so very hardy. And they like sun or part shade. They get to be 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. And they're native, long blooming, and cold hardy. Really pretty. And these here are a 3-gallon container for $34.98. And you see all of these really beautiful, vibrant blue blooms that look very similar to a lilac. These are butterfly bushes, and they're a dwarf variety of butterfly bush by proven winners. And they are called pugster. Now, the pugster does like a very well-draining soil in a sunny location. In fact, I lost a couple of mine because they were planted in that same said bed that is a little bit wet that I've been talking about. So I lost them after a couple of years, but I absolutely love them. So these here are dwarf butterfly bush called Pugster Blue. They come in Pugster Periwinkle, which is a lighter purple, like a lavender. They also come in white, really pretty varieties. And the light exposure on these is they like sun. They're hardy in zones 5 through 9, and they get to be 2 foot tall by 2 foot wide. They're also really fragrant. They have a really wonderful fragrance, very similar, in my opinion, to a lilac, and this color is just absolutely gorgeous. It is very similar to a true blue, which we know in flowers, blue typically refers to a shade of purple, but in this case, this one does lean really blue. Now, if you keep deadheading these throughout the season, you will get continuous blooms until a hard frost. So these are a little late to get going in the season. You typically don't start seeing blooms form until summer, mid to late June, beginning of July, but then they go until, for me, until a hard frost at some point in October. Really good, small, petite butterfly bush. So $29.98 for a number 2 container of the proven winners Pugster Blue butterfly bush. A really pretty evergreen shrub. This one's called Juniper Old Gold. And what I like about this is that it's green, but it has yellow tips, and it has a really arching habit, which makes it look really graceful. It is deer resistant. They don't touch it in my garden. I have it planted on the side of the yard by my foundation where we don't frequent that area, and they never seem to touch them because they always look to be intact and in good shape. They're drought tolerant once established. They get to be 36 inches in height, and they need 6 foot spacing, hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this one is fairly small, but that gives you an idea of what the foliage looks like. Evergreen shrubs are a great addition to any garden. They'll be your foundational plants, and in areas where you have winters like I do, it gives you something to look at in the garden over the winter. So this container is 3.78 liters, and it's $14.98. Another one of my favorites is the Blue Star Juniper. This is a very low-growing evergreen shrub, great for front of the border. They typically get to be about 3 to 4 foot wide and about 18, they max out for me at least at about 18 inches in height. They are also deer resistant, and they offer such a beautiful contrast in color with this gorgeous blue-gray foliage. They're a full sun shrub, and you will get the best coloring in full sun. And let's see, this small container is $16.98. It gets to be, on the specs here, 36 to 48 inches in spacing and hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I've had mine planted for about 10 years, and they are now at full size, and like I said, about 3 by 4 in diameter and about 18 inches in height. Another one of my favorites, the gold mop cypress. Now the deer also do not touch these in my garden. They have a really loose foliage appearance, which I really like, and they're also full sun. This one here is called False Cypress King's Gold. It's also deer resistant in my garden, so I can vouch for that. They get to be 36 to 48 inches in height. They need 6-foot spacing, and they're hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the thing with these is they do need sun in order to maintain this beautiful golden color. If you have them in a shadier spot, you can see in the under foliage here that they will stay more green. So to get the yellow, full sun. And look how much of a beautiful contrast that is, a yellow with this blue evergreen. Really pretty. Provides a lot of interest in the garden. My very favorite hydrangea to date, and that might change as new varieties come out, but currently in my garden is the little lime hydrangea. Now this is a beautiful hydrangea. It's a smaller, more compact version of the limelight, which was the first introduction of this variety. And the limelight gets pretty large at 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, where the little lime stays at about 3 to 5 foot tall and wide. And of course, you can always prune these to size maintain them. But they start opening up with really green buds, and then they start aging to this creamy color before turning pink. And just as the summer winds down and the nights become cooler, they will start aging to beautiful shades of different shades of pink and mauves, just absolutely gorgeous. So really long season of interest with this particular hydrangea. So let's see. This container here is looks like a 2-gallon for $29.98. Let's check out the specs. And here is the tag for the little lime panicle hydrangea. Now the panicle hydrangea types can also handle more sun than the macrophylla or mophead types. So this variety in my garden I have planted in full sun, and it handles it beautifully. So it likes full sun 6+ hours a day, can also handle part sun at 4 to 6 hours, and it is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a petite shrub, cold hardy, and the size on it is 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. And there is the coloring of it. Now I have been told that in the south, where the nights don't get as cool, they do not change to that pink coloring. So that could be the case in some zones, but here in my zone 6, it does in fact change all the way through. Little lime panicle hydrangea. My store also has the dappled willow Hikuro nishiki in a shrub form instead of a standard or tree form. And this one also reads as a part sun shrub. It needs 5-foot spacing, hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and these like water. And let's see here. This container is a 3-gallon in the Home Depot brand container for $26.98. And here's a look at some of the foliage. It's really pretty. See, some of the tips have a bit more pink coloring. And this beautiful Proven Winners hydrangea is sitting here in full sun, and it looks like it's handling it pretty well. The foliage is dark, so it's either supposed to be this dark or maybe the sun is turning it that dark, but it's also a really pretty large leaf or big leaf hydrangea. And this variety is called Let's Dance Can Do. It's a reblooming big leaf hydrangea. So that reblooming aspect is really interesting. It says it was the flowering shrub of the year for 2023. And let's see how big these get. It needs 6+ hours of sun, or 4 to 6 hours of sun at part sun. Hardy in zones 4 through 9 or to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and they get to be 3 to 4 foot tall and 3 feet wide. It's reblooming, easy care, and supersized blooms. It does really have beautiful blooms. This really pretty shade of pink. And this hydrangea here, the Proven Winners Let's Dance Can Do, is a number 2 for $29.98. And I found some larger containers of that Juniper Old Gold. So this gives you a better idea of the shape of the shrub as it starts to grow. You can see how it has this really graceful kind of arching, spreading habit. It grows sort of in a horizontal fashion, and it's kind of like a lime green color. It's really beautiful. You can kind of see that in the photo as well. The tips will get more golden where the sun hits. And this larger container is a number 3 for $26.98. So I would say this one is almost 3 times the size and only $10 more. So if you can afford it, I would probably go for the bit more mature one. A little bit bigger hole to plant, but you start off with a little bit more instant impact, at least in this case. But they do grow really fast. So even if you plant the small one, in a couple of years, it'll be this size. If you haven't gotten any ferns yet, but you still want some, these will be great until your first frost in the fall. So $14.98 now, marked down from $22.98. They still look to be in really good shape. These like shade and water. In terms of perennials, I'm still waiting for all of the beautiful coneflowers to show up. So the varieties are mostly the same as my last Home Depot video a couple of weeks ago, but there's a couple of new things. They have a bunch of new Stella d'Oro daylilies. Now daylilies are a plant that just keeps growing and growing, and then you can divide them so easily. In fact, this container here is $14.98. This is their 2-gallon perennial or 1.5-gallon perennial container. But if you take a look in here and you don't mind dividing them right out of the container, you can get at least 2 plants out of this, maybe even 3, because there's a small section here. Daylilies divide extremely easily. And the reason they're called daylilies is because each one of these blooms just lasts one day. But this yellow plant here looks really beautiful interplanted with some salvia or even some purple nepeta. Really pretty contrast. Purple and yellow are opposite on the color wheel, so they look really nice together. Now deer really love these. Daylilies are like deer candy, so you do have to protect these if you want to enjoy their beautiful blooms. And here is the information on the daylilies. They are perennial for full sun, and even when they're not in bloom, you have this grassy texture. I do find that they tend to get a little yellow after blooming, similar to what you see here, but they are still a really easy low fuss perennial. And they get to be 12 inches in height, and they need 24-inch spacing, water when dry, hardy to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and they bloom early summer through fall. I also have some Home Depot or house brand bee balm in stock in this really beautiful purple that looks similar to the Proven Winners one we saw out front. And this variety here is called Bee Balm Balmy Purple Monarda, and that is the name of it. Now, true to its name, the bees really do love it. And it is a full sun perennial. This container here is by Vigoro at $10.98. And they bloom late spring through summer, 10 to 12 inches in height, and they need 12 to 14-inch spacing, hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, one thing I would say about Monarda is that just like plants like phlox, perennials like phlox, these are also pretty susceptible to powdery mildew. And powdery mildew is just, it looks like powder on the foliage of your plants. And to prevent that from happening, some varieties are just more susceptible to it. But you can try to hedge your bets against it by giving them proper spacing. So if you leave enough space for air circulation around it, it should help with that some. It looks like all of the perennials that were tagged $9.98 are actually $8.98. So something to keep in mind. It's another really beautiful color combination. Now, I did say that I don't love the golden yellow colors, but I have to say that this golden yellow double petaled Coreopsis looks absolutely beautiful with this purple Monarda. Look at that. Really pretty. This double petaled Coreopsis or tick seed is called Presto. And it looks like it gets 10 to 12 inches in height, and it needs 16-inch spacing, hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Check out these beautiful heucheras or coral bells. I actually have this variety in my garden. I bought it here at the Home Depot. It has almost like a peachy appearance. It looks very similar to the Peach Ice by Proven Winners. And this variety is called Coral Bells Carnival. And it is by Vigoro. It is a part sun perennial. I would say part sun, morning sun would be best, a little bit softer for these foliage type of plants. Has attractive foliage, attracts butterflies, mounded habit. They're $10.98. And they bloom early to late spring. They get to be 10 to 12 inches in height, and they need 12 to 14 inches in spacing, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit for hardiness. Their blooms are just these small stalks that come up with these tiny little flowers. Really pretty. They also have this really pretty variety that looks very much like the Dolce Wild Rose. And let's see what this one is called. Check that out. Really pretty. So also part sun, and this one, it says it's also carnival, but if you check out the difference, they're very different. So carnival could just be the variety and maybe not necessarily the name, but these make really pretty color combinations in a shade garden. A great way to bring color to a shade garden. Actually, their number 2 color pop perennials are now $11.88. So the daylilies that we just looked at for $14.98 would actually be $11.88, as is this yarrow, another really beautiful and landscape staple perennial. In fact, last year I made a video of my top perennials for the garden, and yarrow was one of them. It has really beautiful fern-like foliage and blooms that if you deadhead, you get them for quite some time, and they come in a large variety of colors. So I'm sure that you'd find one that matches your landscape color scheme that you would enjoy. Here's one that is pink. It's almost like a really light lavender pink. And then there's this one that is red, like a rose color. So lots of variety available in yarrow. And look how beautiful these yellow Stelladora daylilies look backed by this salvia. I know I showed you that before, but it just caught my eye again. Really beautiful. And beard tongue or penstemon. Now this one is on its way out. It's fully bloomed. In fact, the one in my garden is pretty much done at this point too. But this was the first year that my penstemon bloomed. I have the Midnight Masquerade penstemon by Proven Winners, and it's got this really beautiful dark foliage. In fact, it's very similar to this one. And this is one of their house brand ones, $14.98. So again, this one would be on sale for $11.88. And this one is called Black Beard Tongue. It gets to be 28 to 34 inches in height and needs 18 to 24 inch spacing, water when dry, and hardy to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Blooms early to late summer. So mine just finished blooming late spring actually, but I really enjoyed this perennial this year. So if you can find it, I would say that it deserves a spot in every garden. Blooms for a really long time and pollinators really love it. See if I can find a good bloom to show you. Look at that. They have these little bell-shaped flowers in this lavender pink color with the contrasting dark foliage. Really beautiful. And this beautiful perennial is called tickseed or coreopsis. And this variety is really pretty because it also has a red center and then that buttery yellow around the edges. I have a variety called Moonbeam in my garden, so it's all this really light pale yellow, which I really enjoy actually. I'm more a fan of the paler yellows versus the golden yellows, but these are also a really prolific bloomer. Look at all of these buds. They've already started blooming, and there's a ton of buds getting ready to open up. So these bloom for a really long time as well. This variety is called Coreopsis Uptick Cream and Red. It is a perennial for full sun. This container here is $9.98. They get to be 12 to 14 inches in height, and they need 14 to 16 inch spacing. Hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit and blooms late spring through fall. Really long bloom season on these. Well, that concludes today's tour of the current inventory at the Home Depot at the end of June. I hope that you've enjoyed checking things out. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.